Well, thank you guys for having me on, and wherever you're listening from, I hope you're having a nice mid-morning cup of coffee, and hopefully a lot of you guys are back to work. But let's talk about those that are not back to work. We've had to run into a very particular challenge here with the Georgia Department of Labor. We had to shift gears very quickly. If you take a look at the composition of the Department of Labor, it's roughly about 60% unemployment staff, and then about 40% reemployment staff. And it's kind of rough. It's a little bit, it's not quite that much on the unemployment side. It's probably a little bit less than 60%, but just rounding, and that's about where we were. And before this pandemic hit and the shutdown, we were probably about 10% to 20% understaffed at the Department of Labor due to budget cuts we've had on the state and federal side over the last many years, which I'm sure those of y'all who heard me speak have heard me talk about the fact that we're over 1,000 people smaller than we were coming out of the last recession. And so we were a little bit understaffed for the amount of claims that we were dealing with before this started. And we were averaging roughly about 20,000 claims a month. That was the average that we were seeing. And so we went from basically February, 20,000 claims per month, to the next month, basically 1 million claims being filed. And so that caused a lot of issues, as you can imagine. However, we've been able to use a lot of IT solutions to help with this massive amount of claims that we're seeing right now in the state of Georgia. To date, if you go look at the start date of this, we've actually kind of unofficially put down as March 16th. That's when we first started seeing claims start to tick up. To today, you're talking about 1.8 million claims have been filed in the state of Georgia. All those have to be processed. And so we actually have had a lot of success in getting through processing most of those. Matter of fact, I just heard yesterday from a national organization. I don't know where they get these figures from because I don't even have them, but they said that Georgia was second in the nation on claims and being processed. And they said that one of the reasons why our claims numbers are so much higher than other states is because of Georgia's ability to actually process claims has been better than other states. Which I thought was I guess a nice compliment, but it's kind of a left-handed compliment, the fact that we've seen so many claims filed. Interesting in those numbers, though, when you take a look at those numbers of claims, keep in mind that anybody can file a claim, all right, for any reason. There's no barrier to somebody filing a claim. You could have no work history at all for several years. You could still file a claim. But out of that 1.8 million claims that were filed, so far as of yesterday, only about 850,000 of those claims were actually what we call verified claims so far. And what that means is, being a verified claim, that means they're actually attached to a W-2 job that has been reporting their wages, that has been, sending in taxes on them, that are normal, regular unemployment claims. So 850,000 out of the 1.8 million. Now, in addition to that, you're going to have a lot of other people that have also filed claims, and I'm going to briefly kind of get into that in just a second and explain what some of the stuff that we're dealing with. So when you take that large number, the 1.8, and you've got about 850,000 regular claims, you're saying, well, where are the other claims? Well, if you'll go back basically to March 27th, when Congress passed the CARES Act, they actually added in several new programs. One of the new programs they added in was unemployment for those, and I'm going to abbreviate this, that are either self-employed, gig workers, 1099 workers, or have limited work history, which that's actually a definition that's kind of hard to define. And so Congress came up with this program. It had never been done before. No state pays unemployment to this particular crowd. And then they handed it off to U.S. Department of Labor. U.S. Department of Labor roughly took about 2 weeks and then some to basically flesh out the rules and regulations of how they envisioned this program to be put out there. And that program is the Pandemic Unemployment Assistance, PUA. You may have heard that bounced around. A lot of people have been using that term now, PUA, for just about everything, but that is for those that are self-employed. And so once we got all these rules and regulations, we basically had to invent a system to intake and process all this information. And to kind of give you an idea how difficult this was, on a regular claim, those of you that are out there, when you send in your information, you send in the person's wages that they work for you, all the pertinent information, and then you pay the tax on them. We have all that in our system, so when they do file a claim, we can verify all that. Well, basically, U.S. Department of Labor wanted us to set up a similar system for these self-employed. The only problem with that is we don't have any of their information. We don't know who they are. We don't have anything on them. So we had to invent a system that would intake all that based on their rules, take all of their financial information, come up with a weekly benefit amount, just like we would for regular unemployment, and then pay that out. We could not use our current system to do that because it's not built to intake information that way. So we had to create an application from scratch. And if anybody in here is in that field, you got to know that coming up with something that does all this type of stuff and also can verify somebody's identity and all these kind of things, and it's very complicated. Good news is for Georgia residents is we were able to basically build this application in about 2 weeks after we were handed the rules and regulation. We were one of the first states to start paying out on the self-employed going forward, but because we had to spend so much time and effort on building this new application that we were tasked to doing, it probably knocked us back about 2 weeks on regular claims because we were having to basically put all hands on deck to get that off the ground. Because you got to remember, we have people that may have lost their jobs back in March, and here we were third week in April and just hadn't got the system off the ground. But we've been able to do that. When you take a look at those claims right now, we've got about 133,000 self-employeds that have a verified claim that have been approved for payment. And when we talk about payments, let's talk a little bit about how much has been paid out. So far since March 16th on regular unemployment claims, on just the coming out of the trust fund for people on regular unemployment, we paid out a little bit over $1 billion since March 16th. That's billion with a B. And the PUA, the self-employeds, they've seen about 100 million in payments go out. Now, there's also another thing called the Federal Pandemic Unemployment Compensation, and that is the $600 addition a week, which has been quite controversial in some parts, but also been talked about a lot. Which what that does is if you receive benefits either through PUA or through regular unemployment, it qualifies you for the extra 600, and those benefits started on the week ending April 4th. The amount of money we've paid out in the extra $600 is just a little over $2.1 billion. So if you add all those up together, you're basically talking about unemployment payments in the state of Georgia of in excess of $3.2 billion since March 16th. That's a lot of money to handle and send out. And I do know that we had a large amount of payments that were being processed last night because our system did not finish processing until 10 a.m. this morning. Anytime it takes it longer than, or it goes into mid-morning for it finishes processing, you're going to have a big payout day. So that's kind of where we are on processing claims. We're right now on the verified claims, we're at 85% of actually paying out on those claims. One of the interesting things is that if you take a look at the claims that are being paid out, the ones that haven't been paid out, some of those are going to be claims that have been newly filed that have not gone through the process that are individual claims. But we do have a large number of claims, not so well, it's a fair amount in regular claims, but a lot of them, the PUA claims that have not been paid out. And it hasn't been because of any kind of glitch or issues on our side. We've had a very strange phenomena that we've never really noticed before because it's been such small numbers. But part of the unemployment process is once you file a claim and you get it started and everything is verified, even once you get approved, you have to let us know every single week which weeks that you've been unemployed, and it's called claiming your weeks. We've had a very large amount of people that have verified claims that can be paid out that have not gone in and verify their weeks. Now, some of that confusion may have been for the fact that we have two different unemployment systems right now. We have the regular unemployment system and then the PUA system that was passed by Congress, which you have to verify your weeks separately. You don't do them in the same system because it's a different system that the feds want us to do. They have a different set of questions, different set of criteria, different set of record keeping, and there was no way that we could do it in our regular system and being able to keep those separate and being able to get those put together to send to the feds when they request all their information. But we have over 40,000 people that could be being paid unemployment right now. They have not requested one single week of unemployment, which is very unusual. So there's a lot of people out there that could be getting unemployment, and a lot of these people are actually the ones that are calling our career centers and our main office every day, many times a day, wondering how come we have not sent them their payment. And we have sent multiple emails out to these individuals letting them know that they need to go in, certify for their weeks. We don't know if they're getting the emails or if they're not reading the emails. But once you start adding those individuals calling, wondering where their payment is through the fact that they haven't claimed their weeks, and then those that have actual issues, maybe ID issues, or they have a stop on their payment due to some kind of, child support stop or something like that, you could easily get 60,000 people calling a day. And when you only have 1,000 employees across the state and a phone capacity of about 65,000 that it can call in at any given time, that's the reason why you're hearing people say that we have shut off our phones. We have not shut off our phones. What you're seeing is we have so many people calling at the same time, and if everybody's on the phone, talking to somebody, and then the voicemail gets filled up, and then all the available phone lines are being used, the phone company actually sends a signal out saying, or sends out a message saying that, this phone has been disconnected or it's not available or whatever. So we have not turned off any of our phones. The phone traffic is heavier than we can get to. People say, why don't you hire more people? Well, I mean, to handle that kind of phone traffic, you would have to hire several thousands of people. And not only would you have to hire several thousands of people, they would have to be specifically trained to be able to handle claims. And that takes 5 or 6 weeks to get somebody competent on doing claims, knowing the rules and regulations and how all that kind of goes. You also have to have the capacity to train. So basically, you're talking about a perfect storm of a bad situation. And so what we're trying to concentrate on right now is spending as much time as we can just processing claims, and then getting to the trouble claims when we can, because it's really not going to go any faster than how we're being able to handle it right now. We have used IT to be able to auto process a lot of claims, to handle a lot of errors that we're seeing being made, common errors by claimants, where we can go in, we can fix those errors for them, where in the past we would have to do a manual fix. So we've been leaning very heavily on IT. Which is one of the reasons why, when you take a look, I mean, not that anybody's going to care in the state of Georgia, but when you compare us to the rest of the states out there, we're performing much higher when it comes to actually processing and paying out claims than other states. We're probably easily in the top 5, if not in maybe the 1 or 2 spot. Even with the fact that we're seeing, a record number of claims. So all that being said, is we're also getting a lot of people filing claims that have no work history, which those still have to be investigated. But it still does clog up the system. But we're getting through it the best that we can. You had an agency that was basically primarily focused on filling the available jobs that we had, which we still do have a lot of available jobs. Having to pivot in a matter of just a week or two to basically everybody, all hands on deck, doing just unemployment claims. And now we're starting to see a little bit of a pivot going back the other way. The big challenge we're going to have right now is because of how these systems were set up by Congress, is getting people to go back to work because some of these benefits are extremely rich. You talk about somebody that's getting the maximum amount of unemployment from the state of Georgia, which is $365 a week plus $600. You're talking $1,000 a week. That's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, that's you're talking close to $50,000 a year thereabouts. So that's a challenge that we're going to have to face. We do. This is something I want to tell you, employers. We have a new thing that we're going to be rolling out this week. Matter of fact, it's semi-live today. and it has to do with the employer filed claims. And I would tell anybody that's listening right now, if you are currently doing employer filed claims, keep doing those. Even though you may be going to have some permanent layoffs, keep doing those claims, please, because we're going to put in a new feature that did not exist before. And we got some webinars that are coming up right now that we're putting out there and we're advertising. And also these webinars are going to be videoed and you can watch them later. But on the employer filed claim screen, we're going to add some new features to where, let's say you're getting ready to reopen and you need your employees to come back, but you know that some of them are not going to be coming back because you're going to have to permanently lay those off. We're going to give you a tool to which you can tell us which ones are going to be permanently laid off, that you're agreeing that they do need to continue to get unemployment, but you don't want to file for them anymore. You'll be able to select those, and then we can automatically switch them over to an individual claim. And the reason why this is important, because in the past, when we did temporary layoffs using the employer filed claims, if they went to a permanent claim, they would have to file a brand new claim and go through the process again. This will shortcut that process, and there'll be no break. And so, so just stay tuned. That's going live this week. It may actually be live right now as we're talking. I know that they let about 10 or 12 employers go ahead and try the system and test it out this morning. And they were going to take it down for a little while to see if those went through as planned, and cross your fingers, hopefully it did. It's going to make the process a whole lot easier, but we're going to keep that process going forward and kind of weave it into the regular unemployment process. So when you have to actually lay off somebody and you agree that it is an actual layoff because of lack of work, you would actually file for that person and then select that that's going to be a permanent layoff, and then it would automatically switch over to an individual claim, and then the claimant would take over the process. And the reason why we want to make that permanent is because that type of claim process is much faster for the person you're laying off. They can get payment within 5 to 7 days versus 21 days. Also, it cuts down on the paperwork on both for us and for you, because you've already said, yes, I agree, this person did work for me and we're going to lay them off. Now, speaking of those that you called back that are refusing to come back because they'd rather get unemployment, on those individuals, when you get ready to come back, you just quit filing for them, and they will have to go out and do an individual claim. And at that point, you know, they'll put in whatever reason they're going to tell us that they don't have a job. And then when you get that paperwork, then you can say, no, they were offered a job. They have a job here. And they refuse to come back to work. You can also report them online through our UI fraud system that's on our employer side, where you'll see on there is a link. You can go in there and you can report that person through that too, if you think they're trying to commit UI fraud by not reporting to work and to get unemployment when they do have a job that's sitting there waiting for them. Which I have a funny feeling that's a system that hasn't been used much in the last few years. I have a funny feeling it's about to see record numbers being used right now, because I've already talked to several employers that have having the same situation, and it's something that's basically created by this system. And I'm going to be on some calls this week with some of our members of Congress, and I'm going to be representing the state of Georgia, and there's going to be several states represented, and they're wanting to know about extending this program. I've already got my ideas about what we need to do about that. I don't think we need to be doing an extension on it right now. I think it's too early to be talking about an extension. We don't know what the economy is going to look like in 2 months. And there'll be plenty of time to make any kind of changes or enhancements by the time July gets here. And so those benefits run out in July. I think we need to wait and see what the world looks like in July. And then, you know, the system's already in place. It just takes Congress to act. And so they need to kind of wait and see what the economy's doing. So with that, that's kind of a snapshot of what we got going on right now. Basically, we still have a lot of claims that are still being filed, employer and individual claims. And we're continuing to effort to get those complete as quickly as possible. And we can go to the questions now if you're okay with that.